Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the iOS Lead Essentials podcast. Here we discuss the strategies in your journey to become a complete senior iOS developer. My name is Bogdan, I'm a senior iOS developer and lead instructor in the iOS Lead Essentials program, the online training program for iOS developers who want to become complete senior developers. Today our special guest is Mihai from Romania, a senior iOS developer, student of the iOS Lead Essentials program, and he's also my close friend, as Mihai and I work together in different companies, so we kind of know each other very well. Hi Mihai and welcome.
Hi, Bogdan. It's really nice to be here.
Same. I've been waiting for this opportunity to talk to you on the podcast, so here it is. So yeah, can you tell us a bit about your achievements with the program that we'll be discussing today?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you for having me here. To go through my list of achievements, I would say that once I finished the program, I had good knowledge to create a solid code basis with an extremely flexible architecture. Um, I would also say that I gained a lot of technical confidence to lead a project by myself without actually having any lead experience before.
Right.
And also, I would say that passing interviews has become much easier since the program. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. I particularly know about your promotion to a lead position and also um, the other things you mentioned. So, congrats on that. And for you
Thank you.
watching, just stay until the end to learn how Mihai did it and you can achieve it too. Our goal is to find replicable steps that others can follow to achieve the same. So, Mihai, how long have you been an iOS developer? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, sure. I've been an iOS dev for about 10 years. I
Wow.
started as an intern at a small company here in Cluj. Um, the internship was a kind of a requirement during university. So yeah, I went there. Initially wanted to be an Android dev, if
Whoa.
that's yeah. I really enjoyed Java, so I went to this internship, and they said, okay, we only have an iOS dev position, if that's okay. I said yes, and yeah, now here we are. Yeah, so I think that after that, I think in naturally I changed my job about 9 months after or so, and yeah, I joined a different company with a more skilled iOS team with multiple developers, including yourself, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's when I feel that my career started to to catch wings, or how
Yeah.
should I say that? And yeah, it's only been uphill from there, I would say.
So now, since you're already from for a decade in this iOS development industry, like what would you say are your career goals, like overall goals? Where do you want to get to?
Honestly, even if it's been a decade, there still isn't like a definite path for myself because I'm like segueing between achieving technical mastery or a management position. As I mentioned, I had some lead experience, which in turn turned into management experience, but we'll come back to that. But yeah, I would say that it's still unclear, it's still fuzzy, and it's fine, I think, for even after a decade in the industry. So I don't know. I think I see myself as someone being able to mentor people while also focusing on becoming like a very good and knowledgeable dev.
Right. I think many developers can relate to that because once you become proficient and you kind of enjoy what you're doing, it's a bit odd to transition to a fully management oriented position where you no longer can put your skills to use and you have to do other tasks. So I get it. I had similar questions about my career at at some point, and at least I decided that I still want to be fully involved in the technical part. So that's nice, but it really depends on the individual, right?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
nice. So how'd you find out about the iOS Lead Essentials program?
So we were actually using some of the principles taught in the program, as my lead developer at that time was already a member of the community. And yeah, to their suggestion, I took a look just to see what the program is about. There was that crash course that was advertised on LinkedIn. I joined. I saw that the principles were extremely beneficial and could really help me take uh, my career to the next level, I would say. And yeah, the first opportunity I got right after that crash course, I joined the cohort 14, I think.
Nice, awesome. And do you remember the things you struggled mostly with at that time that you were trying to maybe find solutions or better ways to do them?
Yeah, I would say that one of my biggest struggle was first of all knowing how to approach TDD. I mean, I had some experience with TDD. I tried it myself. I saw videos online, but I didn't really have a solid example or a project that I worked on that would uh, employ TDD like I
For
don't know, like
real, yeah.
the proper way, yeah, for real. Like I mean, ourselves, we used to write features and then write tests. So
Yeah,
having this process reversed, it was really weird. I'll be honest, it's a high learning curve, and it's not easy. But
I agree.
I would say that the program made it much easier. Like it becomes like I, I would say second nature when you fully understand process and you have those examples in front of you. So yeah, I think TDD was one of the struggles like that convinced me. Okay, the program will work. And then there was the fact that I didn't know how to use architecture properly in my advantage. So there are several, I don't know, tricks you can do with architecture, with using patterns and creating separation between layers, like proper separation, which I was, I mean, I had some knowledge, I had some understanding, but I couldn't like use properly. And this goes hand in hand with my next struggle, not knowing how to properly understand and the solid principles and see when, for example, one of them is not properly applied. And one thing that comes to mind with this is the interface segregation principle. I remember a very clear example where I wanted to reuse the interface of a presenter. I found myself writing functions, empty functions, just because uh, the interface was defining them, which I mean you shouldn't do if you don't have to. So
Yeah,
it was really weird.
I know. Yeah, weird, but I mean, if you don't know another way, then you just do it and you live with it, right? So,
Yeah, I mean basically what that said was that I was not, uh, yeah, I was not adapting properly to change, and I would do all this weird stuff with which at that time I wouldn't recognize. I mean, I knew I was following those principles, and I would be very proud of doing that. But there was these violations which like I wasn't even aware that I was violating these principles. So
right. And if I can add to that, I mean, most of these struggles we've been to together. So I think what was most difficult when you don't have all the architecture skills that we now have is you kind of try to fit everything into one of the patterns. If you use, like, for instance, we used Viper for one of the projects we worked on. I think we used MVVM for another one. And we try to fit everything in those standard template classes, and didn't have much confidence to go out and just create the components we needed, right? So I think a lot of the times the struggles came from that. Like you said, like trying to fit everything in the presenter, so then you have a huge presenter interface, and if you try to reuse it, and you're kind of breaking some of the solid principles because they accumulate all the methods all the clients need. So yeah, I remember that, and I think for both of us it was kind of similar when we started to see architecture in the way where, okay, we don't have to, like, we can choose the pattern we use in each case. It doesn't have to be like a monolithic, if you want, approach where everything has its own, like, interactor and entity and whatever other classes we used, coordinators, and it's a lot more than that. So I think once we got that freedom, we could really express ourselves. And of course, with time, you learn more patterns, you become more proficient, but just having the confidence to be able to separate whenever you think, like, even if it's maybe a suboptimal extraction of a component, it's still better than fitting everything in a presenter or view model. So I remember those times very well, and we could, it wasn't all bad. Like, we could write tests, of course, after the feature was implemented, and we have separation with abstraction, so it wasn't bad. We had good coverage, we were increasing the code coverage, but we could still feel those limitations of the architecture, of following the patterns blindly, having like kind of big components, not massive, I would say, but still big components that had a lot of complexity. And of course, I think, and you can tell me if this is right or wrong, seeing cross-cutting concerns with a separate lens, and being able to extract that from components, just put them in the composition level, is also a game changer for both. So that could also help a lot when simplifying things, right?
Yes, definitely. That actually that concept that I honestly didn't pay much attention to it, that like previously before the program, like it was mind blowing when I saw how easy it was to just remove something that should not actually be part of a class. For example, analytics in a presenter. That was really game
Yeah.
changing, so to say. And yeah, to what you said earlier, I think you expressed it perfectly. The concept of trying to make everything fit to a, a standard, to a
Yeah.
pattern, to an architecture, because we weren't. I think we weren't thinking it properly, because we were trying to match things by the architecture. We weren't expressing ourselves in terms of the architecture. I don't know if
Right.
this difference is obvious when expressing it, but when you do it in code and you start seeing the principles in action, it does make sense.
Yeah. I fully agree. So it's like you said, it's a learning curve. You
Yeah,
build on it incrementally, and of course, for both of us, just going through the program was really helping solidify those pieces of knowledge. So
yeah, no pun
awesome.
intended, right?
Yeah, of course. So how would you say your career was going at the time you joined the program? Like, were you satisfied? Were you still looking for something?
I would say that at that point, my career was going fine. I didn't actually have any complaints in that regard. However, I don't know, seeing all these concepts in action and being able to apply them at work, of course not right away, but after learning and passing the assignments in the program, I know it felt like a faster than normal evolution of it, and
Right.
I was able to see my project with different eyes. I mean, we were already employing some of the principles that are taught in the program, so it was already a pretty good code base. But the evolution of my career in the later months, so after I joined the program, I managed to basically pass to a leadership position at some point, and I had the confidence to do that based
Right.
on what I learned in the program, as I didn't have previous leadership experience, so that helped. And
Yeah.
finally, I even managed to get into like a hybrid management position in which I would lead both the Android and iOS teams. So I would say uh, it went uphill
Yeah.
since I joined the program.
Which is awesome. Okay, so if we recap here, you mentioned struggling with architecture, with TDD, of course, which is a high cost to acquire skill, in my opinion, and also with the solid principles. And then you found about the program and decided to join, right? Because you definitely could see those are things that are covered in the program. So can you tell me about how you decided to join and if you have any second thoughts?
Honestly, it was the decision came based on the crash course and the principles that my colleague was already using on our project that came from the program. Yeah, I honestly had no second thoughts, and I don't have any regrets at all right now. So it's from a professional point of view, I think it was one of my best decisions to join the
Right.
course. So.
That's great to hear. Okay, so after you joined, what was like your first feedback when you started to, I don't know, get exposed to the content of the program? How was that like?
Honestly, I felt like a kid in the candy store. I would just run at content, so to say. I started just watching everything, just reading
Yeah.
through the comments and looking at those initial articles that are in the course. I was yeah, I was really like even in the crash course prior to the actual program, I was already amazed. But yeah, when looking through those articles, and then when I finally got to the videos, I was like, okay, I have to finish this. I have to go through all of them. But yeah, it's you have to take your time because there are a lot of new concepts there that I know you might have some experience with, but you need to take it. I wouldn't say necessarily take it slowly, but pay much attention, be focused when you go through it, and yeah, be there. And yeah,
Right.
it was
So it's
yeah,
about the quality of the time spent as well, right? And
exactly.
uh, about taking your time, like how do you actually do it? What was your um, process, let's say?
Yeah, so my strategy was pretty much trying to start watching these videos if possible at the start of the day, because I know you have a better, I know, a clearer mind. You are ready to take in more information, and yeah, try to practice what you see there. Uh,
Yeah.
I would sometimes rewatch some of the videos just to make sure that the concepts made sense and I'm following everything correctly. And yeah, I'd say I would spend like 1 or 2 hours per day, but I had days in which I watch more content. And but yeah, I would say on average that's about the pace I went to. And yeah, I'll be honest with you, it was harder in time, and not because of the program itself, but because of my inability to manage my time correctly. So it took me a bit longer to finish the actual program. But yeah, if I had followed that pace, I would have finished a bit earlier.
So how long did it take to finish the program? Just to get an
I,
idea.
I think it was about a year,
Right.
because as I said, I made some pauses in between, but yeah, I'd say that it was about a year. I think so.
So you started with a sprint and then had to stop a bit
Yeah,
to rest and continue, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
that was the problem, and I think hearing from other people, they had similar struggles, and yeah, as I said, not because of the program itself, but because of the inability to manage the time.
yeah, that's it. I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially when you're working towards like a longer term goal. It's hard to have that cadence, that whatever 1 hour a day or half an hour a day, but for a long time. It's very hard to stick to that. So a lot of people just find it very difficult. And with those long term goals, it's very at some point something breaks, right? And you kind of take a pause and then, but to your advantage, you came back and you still finished it in the 1 year. So I would say there's a positive to that, because it's also easy to like fall off entirely and never finish it, right? You get like life gets in the way, you get distracted with other things, and you just never find the momentum to get back to it. So I think that's pretty important. And I also talk to other people, to other developers, and some of them really struggle with that and cannot do it, or just feel like, oh, it's been too long, now I need to restart from the first lecture just to be able to I don't know, have a clear mind about it. So it's difficult. It's like it's like in faculty, right? When we had to study for the whole semester before we can get some result from an exam. So it was also a marathon, like here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as you mentioned, like the biggest I don't know, anxiety point, if I can uh, name it like that, is the thought of actually not finishing, because it becomes harder to get back to something that you've been in and you paused. So yeah, I would say I'm happy with myself that I found the motivation to come back to it. And yeah, I'm very happy that
Yeah.
I gone through it all, because the especially at the last part of the program, I think the content is the quality of the content is yeah, mind blowing, I would say.
Yeah, when everything comes together with
Exactly.
main module, composition root, and all the composing patterns, adapters. Yeah, it's a lot of
And yeah,
it's a lot of knowledge there, and
yeah, plus
hard to
the
digest.
the
Yeah,
extra sessions at the end, those are
yeah,
also amazing.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so I just wanted to add that at least in my case, where when I took the program, I was really afraid of falling off. Right, so I kind of started like you, like maybe an hour a day or something like that, and I was really working towards like I'm not gonna miss this. So uh, I at that time I think I read an interesting book which is Atomic Habits, and they talked about some like scaling down on the habit, right? So if I do 1 hour a day, but in the worst days I do 5 minutes or 7 minutes, something like that, but I still don't fall off. So using that strategy really helped, because even in the days when I was really busy with something else or like life got in the way, I could still do like a small tiny part, and the next day I wouldn't feel like, okay, now I've stopped. It's just, yeah, it's still going, like I still made some progress. So for me that was a really important part that allowed me to never lose the momentum Because I mean, we both know there are good days, there are bad days, there things come up. You have to take care of something like, um, and how you work to that maze is very like bound to your actual habits. So on other occasions, I fell short. This is one where I felt like, especially reading that book at that time, really helped. Gave me that framework to avoid missing. But I'm not I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, because it still happens in other occasions. So it's just maybe a tip for whoever's watching and struggling with these things. Like it can help. Okay. So you mentioned in the first part like struggling with um, architecture, with solid principles, and of course with TDD. So how would you say after you finish the program those things are impacted?
I would say that I reached a level of understanding that architecture no longer stands in my way, so to say. More so, I use it in my advantage, and yeah, I'm able to build code bases right now that are flexible, that use the architecture in their advantage. One example you gave with the analytics, the cross-cutting concern, that now I know how to extract from the app and not pollute my code base with the analytics dependencies where I don't really need them. Yeah, that's I know that can be a pain. I don't know. I would also say that now that I if I attend an interview, let's say, I'm much more relaxed and I'm more confident talking about these concepts. And not only interviews, like any day-to-day conversation. Like previously, maybe I don't know, maybe someone would say something and I would understand it not fully, and I maybe even was afraid to ask, okay, what do you mean? Like when somebody spoke with so much ease about a concept that I don't know, I felt I was supposed to understand, and yeah, now I do. But and I think that in terms of architecture, solid principles, and TDD, uh, the program helped fill these gaps, and yeah, now I'm comfortable taking having these conversations with anyone without having that voice in my mind saying, okay, don't say something stupid, don't say something stupid. And yeah, like in my day-to-day job, I would say I have like a better angle how to approach these things, if I can say that, how to transform requirements into code. I know the program presents a very clear way of how to do this, and
Right.
this is something that can be a game changer, especially in work environments where the requirements coming from management or from product are fuzzy. Uh, you
Yeah.
are able to clarify them and transform them into code. And
Yeah.
then
I would say the important part here is, so just wanted to add that maybe getting the requirements, so working with the team, being owner on some parts, and just say, okay, we need to expand on this requirement because it's unclear or fuzzy, like you said. I think that's a big game changer, because a lot of teams are used to just working with bad requirements, and when the app or the feature gets in the hands of the product owners and the designers, like, no, 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 this is not what I had in mind. So it's like 1 month after the tasks were created, right? So working on that in the first phases, I think is also very important. Okay.
yes, I agree. And in this way, the program shows a framework on how to translate them into code. But then, as you said, you can also extrapolate that into your conversations with the product and slash management people to clarify them. So in my case, that was also helpful. And I would say that another place where this knowledge has helped was actually in my current job. It helped me get through the interview process and apply everything in my day-to-day work. So I would say it did its purpose. It fulfilled its purpose.
Right. Awesome. So if I understood correctly, you first got into a lead position and then you switch jobs and now you have like a senior position in another team, right? So
Yes, yes, that's right.
I'd like to decompose both of these changes and understand how you approach each one of them, because they are different. Like getting promoted at your current company to a lead position is one thing. Getting to a different company in a senior position is another thing. So I think there's a lot of tips or know-how that you can share here on how you did it. So I think people are curious how you do that.
Yeah. So for the promotion part, I'd say it was really important to be involved in the project, to also I don't know, I see developers do their bare minimum, just show up, do the tasks and go home. And then that's maybe something that you need to avoid if you want
Yeah,
to
it's
be
not a
an integral
recipe to
part.
get promoted, right?
Definitely not. Yeah. And I'd say that that's where it all starts. Try to participate, try to understand the business of your project, your product, and then be there in meetings, bring up suggestions, improvements, not only from a code perspective, but also from a maybe, I don't know, you can propose a feature. That's what actually happened in my case. During that lead position, I would also come up with feature suggestions. And of course, it differs from company to company because there are companies where these processes are very well established and you don't have the chance to do that much. But if your work environment allows it, do it as much as possible. Be there, participate, speak up, and I think that somebody will notice that you're always the person to ask when there's a question, and definitely this will naturally take you to a promotion at some point.
Awesome. And how long did it take since you finished the program till you got the promotion?
I think I was actually it was actually during the program, but
Yes.
at the later stage, so I had already passed the more than half of it at that point.
Right.
So I also had the technical confidence to be there and take initiative, because it's not that easy to do that if you're not confident enough in your skills, especially taking a leadership position where you have to make decisions for the entire team. That's not easy if you doubt yourself. So I'd say that at that point I was pretty comfortable with with making decisions for the entire team. So, and the program definitely helped me get there.
Right. And what about the second experience, like moving to a different company? How that worked?
Yeah, the next company was a bit different, much larger, different processes. So yeah, naturally some things were different. But during the interview process, with with the confidence and the knowledge that I gained, I was able to work through the process and the assignments that I received with yeah, I wouldn't say with ease, because that's a uh, yeah, it's probably condescending, but it was uh, much I'd say I was much more confident to do that, and I
Right.
had better results because of that. And I'd say that it changed my perspective on how to approach interviews, because you inside the program you also receive advice about this, and yeah, I was able to apply that confidently, and it was easier than before. Not because the process was easy, but because I was much more ready to do it.
So now looking back, what would you say the biggest takeaways from the program were for you?
In terms of, do you mean like in terms of technical stuff, or generally like?
Both, I guess, because it's again, I would like how you see the changes that happen to the way you work, you approach career decisions, interviews, like technical things, all these things. So it's a each one has a unique view on these things and would say like these are the things that really changed, and I'm curious how you see that.
I'd say that my most obvious difference is the way I look at a code base, especially now that I joined a completely new one, which is has been drafted by people I didn't know before, that I had nothing in common with. So before meeting them, of course, yeah, and I was able to look at the code and spot maybe issues, or see things that were implemented in a very nice way. Yeah, I was able to see all these separations between components, and understand why a certain pattern was used there. Like I was able to do that before, but not at this level, I would say. Like I have a much better understanding to read architecture, if I can say that. This is from the reader's perspective, and now from the uh, writer's perspective, I was also able to write components in such a way to have the, I won't say the best, because you know it, that's a utopia to always write the best code, but to have a very good level of abstraction. And yeah, I would say it completely changed the the way I approach the whole process.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I mean, you probably have the clarity now to see what you're actually trying to do, think about how the component is used, all these things. Not just think about the functional requirement where I need to do this and it's working, so I'm done. Like you see other angles like future user usability, maintainability, all that. And of course, like you said in the beginning, just readability. Like how do you read a certain part of the code? And now that you probably gain more and more experience, as I do, you try to be as, I don't know, as easy to understand as possible. So I think as we grown into our experience, we are writing simpler and simpler code. So everything is like a almost close to dumb complexity. Everything is straightforward, no surprises.
Yes, exactly. That's a misconception that most people have, that once you advance and once you become more proficient, that you will write more complex code. No, it's the exact opposite. It's
Yeah,
much simpler, much clearer, much more readable.
yeah. And I mean, it's not that complicated, but once you understand what each concern does, of course, if you take a class like a view controller presenter and remove threading, remove logging, remove authentication, remove other parts, it, the thing that remains is very easy to understand. The problem is when you combine all these concepts together in the same component. That's when it's hard to read, hard to maintain, not to mention how to test. So it's, yeah, really a different approach, I think. So by the way, I mentioned testing. Like, are you Are you doing testing on a day-to-day basis now? Is that become your like a new norm?
Yeah, I'm still, I wouldn't say struggling, but I'm forcing myself to to do it. And as I mentioned previously, it has become second nature. But yeah, this is, I think, one of the struggles that most people have is to separate or correctly understand the fact that, yeah, writing code for the long term actually means having a solid, tested uh, code base, and
Right.
speed is something that we all suffer from. Right now, I want to finish everything as fast as possible. So yeah, there are some occasions in which I focus on the feature more than on the code, and I don't actually TDD my my features. But yeah, jokes aside, uh, I don't I don't want to deploy anything without being covered by that.
Right. Right. I guess I have to agree on that. You feel you can sleep a lot better if you know the code that gets into production is tested. So even if you have to change it, like it is when somebody wants to change something at the last minute before your release or something like that, you still like, okay, it's fine as long as the test pass, I'm good with it. As opposed to like having that feeling like I know something is wrong, but I just cannot find it. And then it
Yeah,
blows up in production.
yeah, exactly. I don't know. I previously, when I wrote code without tests, I very often had the idea that I ran a car without its like periodic check
Oh
that it could
yeah.
blow up at any time, you know. Like I
Yeah.
knew I did everything properly. Like I put the gas in, my my wheels were at the proper pressure and all that, but I don't know exactly if I took I don't know, a sudden turn to the left that my car wouldn't break down. Yeah, that's how it felt previously, and
Yeah.
yeah, now I'm much more confident.
Yeah. Awesome. To, to me, I would add that a lot of times maybe I had some architecture ideas on how to simplify, how to improve the code, but without the safety net that tests gave me, like when I didn't have tests, I was like, maybe try an idea, see it didn't work, and say, okay, I don't want to break anything, so forget about it, just revert and be done with it. So I think that's one of the ways code becomes legacy is when you have that fear to refactor. So you don't touch that component, don't touch the other component. It's just like it's too complex. Like I don't want to break that already too complicated logic. So you kind of stay away. So having tests, at least for me, is giving me that confidence to say, okay, I'm gonna get in there. I have an idea. I'm gonna try it out, and if the test pass, then I'm good. And that really accumulates. So if you look at the same code base after a year of doing that, like following the Boy Scout rule, where you just make tiny improvements every time you touch a component, the difference, the accumulated difference is huge. And it just
Yeah,
becomes something that like it's also momentum. So people like in your team, I know we had that together. Like one of us was doing an improvement and the other was, yeah, that's nice, and I also have another idea to improve, and let's do the next improvement and the next one. So it kind of gets into a flow, and the result is just like a better code for everyone, which is totally something I would advocate for.
yes, and also I would like to add on a project that we worked together on, having tests from the beginning or close to the actual beginning, how easier it made
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
To We had the confidence to change stuff even of I don't know, 1 year after that, and it was very comfortable because
Yeah.
we had tests. So that
Yeah.
that definitely,
I agree. So that the investment to making tests is to me is definitely worth it. It also cleans up a bit your architecture. Like you see when you're trying to test something that it's not testable, so that also tells you it's breaking other principles, other traits you would like. So it kind of go hand in hand, I think. So
Yes,
all
100%.
yeah. So by the way, can you think of an example where following I don't know, test-driven development or solid principles or all the other principles and techniques we've talked about really helped, like made a difference in one of the projects you worked on and say like, yeah, now I'm really benefiting from doing that.
Yeah, I would say I have an example. And I know you mentioned authentication previously, and you gave the presenter example where it had all those additional uh, additional responsibilities, and yeah, using authentication in the composition route instead of polluting all those presenters with duplicated logic of authentication. That's, I don't know, one of the easiest examples I can give where you can solve this problem by just properly moving the component where it should be, and use maybe the uh, I don't know, you can use a lot of patterns here, but yeah, I would say that placing that in the composition route and controlling the yeah the state of the app from there, and propagating it into all your screens from that point is much clearer, and you see
Yeah.
that the concerns are properly separated.
Yeah, it's also consistent, right? Because I mean, in my experience, when you have logic like let's say authentication, you have it like in 10 presenters, then when you have to change that logic, it's very hard to make the same change in all the places, right? So then
Yes.
what happens is you either forget or you make the wrong change in one of the places, and now you have like different experiences. Like if it happens to um, get re-authenticated in one screen, something happens, and if you're in another screen, something else happens, just because that thing, that logic is not controlled by one component, but it's rather spread across 10 components. And I don't know if this has a name in the industry, but I read somewhere about like having one knob for one thing. So authentication should have one knob. If I need to change something, there's one place to change it.
Yeah.
Logging is the same, and other things. So if you want to make one change, it should be in one place. And to me, that's another also another dimension to thinking about code and about what you said, because otherwise it's very hard. Like you remember how it is when you refactor something or you try to modify some logic, and then you start to search in the project for similar places that have the same code. So it's like, now I need to change that? Like, I'm not sure. So
Yeah.
it gets out of hand very easily. So yeah,
And one
very
class
very
has
nice
an
example.
extra line.
Exactly. Extra
Yeah.
line, extra if condition. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what to do in those situations. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's much easier with having all
yeah.
that logic contained in a single place.
And I remember at least a few occasions where the both of us had to get on a call and figure out why we, like a year ago, decided to make something like a decision to, like you said, separate the logic. Like a component has a different behavior than the others, and it's like you can't figure it out. So
Yeah,
so much time spent.
exactly.
Okay, good memories, at least for me.
Yeah, yeah. Likewise.
So now looking back, if you had to like give advice to a younger developer that wants to take the career to a high level, what would you say is essential? What was the important part for you for making those advancements?
Uh, I mean, the easiest advice I can give, of course, if you can join the program. But yeah, in
That's obvious,
on
right?
a yeah, obviously. But on a personal level, I would say that they should invest in their own development because nobody else will. Try to look for ways they can improve and I don't know, spend time on that, like uh, trying out new stuff as well, like new
Yeah.
technologies. Keep in touch with everything that Apple releases year after year. I would say that this is something that I uh, didn't always do properly, but it helped
Right.
when I did. For example, I started Swift right after it was released. I mean, even in beta, uh, I would look at what they were doing, and then with Swift UI, I started like uh, one right after they announced it, and then we built a project, an entire project with
Yeah.
Swift UI when it was not that production ready, so to say.
Yeah.
Uh,
We also saw
and
that the hard way.
yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we had a lot of uh, struggles with that. But yeah, it was good to get in touch with it because right now, uh, even after those issues that we encountered, I'm much more proficient in it. So I think this is a very important point to get
Right.
started on new technologies and try them out at least, if not something else.
Yeah, I agree. And I would add to that. So I think the advice is great. Just invest in your development. I would say invest conscientiously. Have like a clear mind of what you're trying to build, on the skills you're trying to acquire, on the content you're trying to learn, and not avoid being driven by other people's content, because nowadays I see so many developers just publishing on their blogs, on their YouTube channels, and if you try to stay up to date and follow everyone, it's just you will be driven by their own agenda, not by your own, right? So you learn what they're publishing instead of what you need to learn. So try to avoid. It's kind of in the same line with, I know, YouTube and all the online content that's out there on different areas. If you get sucked into that, you basically throw away a lot of your time in stuff that doesn't
Yeah,
really help. So try to have that clear mind and say, okay, this is the next thing I need. I'm gonna focus on learning that, or uh, expanding.
yeah. Also, there are some books in the industry that have passed the test of time, and
Yeah,
I mean, it's the same thing that you mentioned. It's somebody else's perspective, but these are pretty much objective in their content, with small exceptions. So I guess books are also a good source of
yeah,
um, yeah, development.
yeah. And even if they are not as shiny as watching a YouTube video, there's definitely a lot of value, especially in those books. So try to look for the books that are really recommended by everyone, that are the fundamentals, like, I don't know, the working effectively with legacy code, or refactoring by Martin Fowler. Those like Robert Martin's books. I think those are
Yeah,
really foundational, if I can say, to any software development engineer, independent of the platform, of the language. So yeah, that's
exactly.
that's a good idea. But I would uh, underline and uh, recap that the advice is to just invest in yourself, as no one else will, as as you said.
And don't forget to
So
have fun with it.
yeah, exactly. Fun is important. Just getting energy from that.
Yes.
So cool, Mihai. This was a great conversation. I still have one question for you. So if anyone, like a company or an individual, wants to reach out and talk to you, how can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn by Mihai Rustiuk, by my name, or I have a website, which shame on me, I don't really maintain, but I also have a contact section there. So it's mihairustiuk.com. Um,
Oh, nice.
and yeah, then that's it.
Cool. I didn't know you have your own domain, so that's a big thumbs up then. So thanks, man, for joining me here, and
Thank you. It
talk
was
to you
great.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'll see
for
you.
you watching, if you want to learn more, just visit us at essentialdeveloper.com, and there you can find a bunch of free resources to improve your iOS dev skills. And you can find us also on the social channels, YouTube, Twitter, and so on. Thanks, and see you soon.